everybody. Welcome to the Everywhere Book Fest. And I'm so happy to be with you today. And these three wonderful women and Jenny, our ASL interpreter. You're watching Out of the Box, Exploring the Boundlessness of Black Girlhood. Credit to Liara for that title. It was amazing. And so I gotta give credit where credit's due. She came up with the title. So we're gonna have a really great discussion for the next 45 minutes. We're all in our homes and we hope you're all safe and comfy and taking care as well. Yeah. And so my pronouns are she, her, and want to establish that from the get-go. And we're all gonna introduce ourselves and then we're gonna get into the first question. So I guess I'll go to right beside me, which is Liara.
Hey. So my name is Liara Tamani, and my newest YA book, are we doing the books and stuff now too?
Yes, please.
Okay. All the Things We Never Knew. And that cover is designed by Love is Wise. It's a YA romance about these two high school basketball players in Houston, Texas, Carly and Rex. And when they meet, they think they are destined to be, but they soon realize that they have to deal with the pain on their own separate paths if they want their love to last. And Carly is dealing with, like, her parents have just announced they're getting a divorce and she has to decide which one to live with. She's super lost just in general. She has no idea what she wants to do in life, and she hates basketball, so she wants to quit, but then where would she go to school with no scholarships, and she has no idea what she wants to do. And then Rex, his mom died when she was giving birth to him, and his dad really has not talked to him. They don't have much of a relationship, so he feels his dad blames him for it. So he has a lot of hurt to deal with. And, when people are hurt, they hurt each other. So, they go through some things, but, it's not all bad and doom and gloom. Rex is a lover of nature. And that's a beautiful thing in the book. Carly, she looks out for signs from the universe to kind of guide her way. And that's kind of a beautiful thing in the book. But, they have to go through their things. And yeah, it's out June 9th. It comes out.
I'm Bethany C. Morrow, she, her pronouns, and I'm the author of A Song Below Water. Let me not cover Tavia's face. And it is a story about two sister friends growing up in Portland, Oregon. I say sister friends because they're not biologically sisters, but they have been living together for the past 3 years, and they're sisters. They live in a Portland, Oregon, where it's contemporary fantasy. So there's just a nice little glamour of fantasy over what is PDX. And Tavia is aware that she is a siren. Sirens in this world are only Black women, so they have to be hidden by a network within the Black community to keep them from being more oppressed. And obviously that has a violent past in this book. Effie has moved in with the Phillips family. Her mother passed away. She was being raised by her also adopted grandparents. And she is changing. She's turning into something. She hopes it's magical. It doesn't feel magical. And she's really looking to Tavia, who she thinks is everything and who she thinks has got it all figured out, to teach her how to deal with all of this. She's also the sole survivor of a traumatic event when she was younger. And so she feels like she's cursed anyway, even though everyone tells her that she's lucky. So it's really about two sisters and what it means to be magical Black girls in a world that does not like you having magic or power, and wants to deny you that.
Sounds so good. Ready for both of those books. So I'm Brandy Colbert. Quick shout out to my middle grade, The Only Black Girls in Town, because it came out a month ago today. So that is for younger readers, if you have any that are interested in that. But my next YA book is called The Voting Booth. Sorry, trying to get it. And that'll be out July 7th. And it is about two Black teens. They're both voting for the first time. It's set in Election Day. It's a book all set in one day, 2 points of view. So the girl is Marva, and she's really like intent on voting. She's been canvassing, just working on the election for years before she could even vote. And so she's been ready for this day. She's the first one in line at the voting booth. And in line, after she votes, she sees Duke, who's also 18 and also voting for the first time. And he's not as into voting in the election as she is, but he's comes from a very politically active family. So he kind of has no choice but to be active. And when she sees him turned away at the polls, Marva gets really intense and is like, you know, we're going to make sure that you can vote today. And so they go off on this whirlwind adventure. It's they skip school to try to make sure he can vote and also deal with voter suppression and just kind of going into all the things that go along with Election Day. And there's also a subplot of an internet cat named Eartha Kitty who goes missing during the day. It was I mean, the book is very important voting, but the cat subplot was one of my favorite parts to write too. So I'm really excited about this.
In this day and age, you can't not have cats. I feel.
Right. What sells a book better than a cat?
Yeah, I just got. Go ahead.
Oh, no,
No, I just got mine, and I was just saying, yeah, like a few months back around Christmas time, and I was just saying, I'm so happy I have him now.
Cute. I love him.
I know, I saw the video. He's so cute. But you know, Liara has that on her Instagram, so we'll make sure to share people's info because I think people need to see that video. It's
such a sweet video
for the culture. I think that's important. So I'm just kind of taking all of these into account, right? We have the dual POVs of a rom-com, sports love, we have sirens, we have oppression, we have voter suppression, we have, you know, missing cats, all that stuff, right? And we're dealing with this across the nation. So y'all are looking at stuff regionally, but what affects us systemically too. And there's just no one cookie cutter way to express these Black women, especially in these situations. So I'm curious for each of you as authors, you know, you're taking the, you know, this, you all have written multiple books. So none of you are debuts in this regard. So when tapping into that and getting into the importance of reflecting Black girls, Black women, what kind of instances were you thinking of as you were building your stories along? And maybe that's an unfair question because sometimes it's not strategic, right? It comes, it's organic, it's emotional, it's all that stuff. What happens when it happens. But there's just so much specificity to what each of you were talking about for these upcoming books. Then that's really the core of what this panel is about, this discussion is about, is that it doesn't fit one category. So how do you express that? And how do you pursue that? And what kind of kernels actually pave the way to do something differently, especially with Black girls as the protagonists? So Brandy, would you like to start?
Sure, I'll start. For me, knowing I was going to write a book set on Election Day and about two teen Black voters, I couldn't help but think of my family. So my family comes from the South, and I grew up in the Midwest, but just like 2 hours from the Arkansas border. So I've always been pretty familiar with the struggles that my parents had growing up in Jim Crow South and, you know, all the struggles with voting rights. And so I couldn't write a book about two Black teens voting without digging into that. So I was thinking a lot about the people who came before Marva and her generation, and, you know, before my parents' generation even, who were able to help Black people get the vote, particularly thinking of like Fannie Lou Hamer and, you know, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, all of these people who helped Black people get to where they are, but then there's still such a fight. So I wanted to weave that into Marva's story and show that she knew where she had come from, the people who had helped get her to where she could be out there fighting for voting rights and, you know, calling people out and saying, you're trying to suppress this guy, like, you know, he's just trying to vote. But also just showing how we need to keep up the fight. You know, clearly it's not over. We're in 2020 and things are not, I don't think, where a lot of people feel they should be. So just kind of mixing the past with the contemporary to show that we're all a product of our ancestry and that also we can always continue the fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And even now, it's like even more like to look at what happened in Wisconsin and to think of how people and voter suppression is going to be happening at such a mass scale. It's like, democracy really is at stake, this November. And, people are already doing everything they can to stop people from being able to place their vote. So a book about voter suppression is right on time. It's like, more relevant than ever.
Sadly, but yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're doing it out loud. It's not even, that's the thing that bothers me is we literally live in a time, especially with voting, where they can just literally do it on camera in front of the nation. And it's so systemically built into, our suppression is so systemically built into this country that people are like, and then move on to the next thing. And you're like, how is this a democracy then?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it didn't even make it. It's it was on Twitter a little bit, and you saw like one head. It wasn't like national news that people were forced to go to the polls.
Yeah,
in the midst of a pandemic.
Or it being national news. It being national news doesn't change it happening.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Brandy pulls the okey doke and puts a cat in it.
And the cat.
So you know what I mean? Like, you get it, right? It's like rope them in with like cat memes, and then you're like, bam, message.
I know, like Eartha Kitty, but also let me tell you about Eartha Kitt, who is not going to sit back and take any mess. So yeah, it's all woven in there.
I love that you have Eartha Kitt in there.
Oh my
God,
that
so
I had
much.
to.
Oh my God. Oh my goodness.
Liara, do you want to talk a little bit about your romance?
Yeah, and where Carly came from and her journey came from. And I think, as Black women, we are all unique. We all have, human experiences. Each and every one of us has a different experience on this planet. So every character we write is just going to be different by nature of them being, a human, in a sense. Our characters are human, of course. Like they're real. Our characters are real. And so they're all very unique. Carly's journey comes a lot from my own, in high school and throughout. I was a people pleaser. I didn't know how to break out of the mold of not doing what I was asked to do. Carly's been playing basketball for a while. She hates it. I played basketball in college. I didn't like it either. I was pretty much forced to play because I'm tall. Y'all might be able to tell, but I'm like 5'11", and I'm pretty tall. Yeah. And then after playing basketball and, in high school, it lasted for a long time. I ended up going to law school because my dad wanted me to be a lawyer. I was like on a track for a long time of not doing the things that I wanted to do. And that, it also created a sense of being lost. If you're not tuned into yourself and you're not tuned into your own desires and what you want for yourself, what is guiding you? It's like you're spinning around, listening to what everybody else has to say, and it's been one of the biggest things in my life, I think, is for me to find my own path, for me to find my own voice, to kind of keep breaking free and becoming more and more myself and breaking free of people's expectations and opinions and all of that. So, it was important for me to include that in Carly's journey. And even in Rex's journey, because we deal with men, we have, all the time in all types of different situations. But in terms of Carly and Rex's relationship, Rex is hurt, and it was important for me to put that in there and put, how you do have to face your hurt or face your pain in order to get past it. A lot of people deal with pain, whether it is from their parents' divorce like Carly, or if it is from something like deep within themselves, and people just try to suppress it, or people like, nah, I'm cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm cool. I'm not hurt. Let's roll on. But, rolling on like that and trying to like, just dismiss and not face, what is hurting you inside, you end up being very destructive, causing pain to other people in your lives, to the things that you love, you know, hurting yourself in multiple ways. And so I think, you know, I wanted to put that in there as a person's, as Rex's journey too, is just to, you know, you have to face the things and the pain in your life in order to go forward and move forward in a way that is, you know, has a sense of healing around it, and you know, in a full sense, in a loving sense. So that's where my things come from.
So in A Song Below Water, I mean, I know we were talking about like how do we want to show black girls and the limitlessness, the boundlessness, and I think the easiest way to do that is to let girls write black girls. We don't have to think of doing that necessarily. Now, that's not to say we've never ingested any sort of messages that we need to interrogate and dismiss. But for the most part, you start closest to the truth if you allow people to represent themselves, as opposed to constantly being told, you know, who we are. So I have sisters. I have many siblings. I'm 7 of 9. I'm the 7th child of 9. I'm sorry, that was my Star Trek reference. So I have many siblings, but there's one sister in particular that this relationship was really based on. I have a picture of us, of course. And what I wanted to show in this story was this love and this, I mean, just full on, just adoring kind of love that sisters have, that sisters share, and there's no outside force or set of circumstances that diminishes that for us. There's nothing that takes away that joy that you share. So yes, these two girls are going through hiding magical identities. One of them doesn't even think she's hiding a magical identity. She's basically having to push back against the fact that she is a Black girl who is heavily involved in a Renaissance fair community, and having, for some reason, her grandmother really disliked that. And then, of course, having the jokes being about, like, not only is she a Black girl at a Renaissance fair, but she's a mermaid in a Renaissance fair. So she's swimming all the time. And oh my gosh, a Black girl is swimming all the time. And it's actually one of the other ways that I really wanted to show how alike and unalike Black girls can be, and how wonderful that is both girls in my book speak ASL, but the reasons that they speak ASL are completely different. Effie speaks ASL because she's a mermaid in a Renaissance fair, so it's a completely fun, adventurous, it's a beautiful second language for her, whereas Tavia uses ASL basically to pass when she can't afford to use her natural voice without giving herself away. She signs, and that is a huge component of their bond, of them both having this language to use together, but still showing that it's two very different things to them, or it began at least as two very different things. They're so alike, but they are so different, and they allow each other to be their different separate selves. So I think that just representing who we are, as long as we make ourselves the target audience, because my point with when I write YA and have Black girls, I'm writing 2 Black girls. Anybody could read it that wants to, but this is 2 Black girls. So I simply have to write as though I'm writing to them. And then I don't really have to worry about making sure I keep Black girls out of boxes. I don't put Black girls in boxes to begin with. So I just have to show who they actually are.
Exactly.
And it makes me think about the commercial aspect of how we're presented, right? Of how POCs, but especially Black women, I think we know kind of like the trifecta, you know, like the overtly sexual, the comedic, you know, side person, and then also the angry Black woman who's just like, you know, Aunt Jemima like.
You got them all.
Way to go, Jen.
And I'm thinking, you know, and it's not to say that for me particularly, I didn't grow up seeing myself, because, you know, I did, you know, being in Black families, we see ourselves. We see ourselves reflected, especially if we have that opportunity to be raised with our families and to have that kinship with them. And I'm in New York City. So, you know, for me, it's just like, if there are no Black people, then I'm highly disturbed where I am. And I work in publishing. So. And so I think about those commercial aspects. And then when we look at literature, especially current day literature, and what you're producing for young people, was there ever something visually that kind of gave you pause that as an artist or artist in the making made you think about, okay, I definitely want to push against that, or I definitely would prefer to see this? I stumped them.
Well, I think I said this on the last panel that I was on, and as much as we would love to say something unique every time we speak, unfortunately, the same crap keeps happening. So sometimes we have to repeat ourselves for a second. But I think the baiting is something that I have noticed commercially that has really been like, is anybody seeing this? Is anybody seeing how you can start out a TV show with the Black woman at the center because you know it's going to draw viewership, and then just real slowly but surely she just gets reduced, removed, replaced, and suddenly you're watching a show that you were like, didn't this start out with? So I think that for me is something that I'm like, no one is going to come into these Black girls' stories and suddenly overshadow these Black girls in my stories. Like, they are going to be the protagonist unabashedly, unapologetically. They are the protagonist. Not even the oppression is going to be the protagonist. You know, not even the power dynamics against them are going to suddenly become, and that's why I think when people say, oh, I was surprised by how much joy there is in this book, because they are the protagonists. The things that happen to them that we know happen are literally things that happen to us. That's not us. That's not who we are. It doesn't reduce who we are. It doesn't mean that we can only express and experience certain emotions, particularly within sisterhood. That's a joyous, fun, engaging, exciting, wonderful, you know, nothing's going to overshadow that or reduce it down to, you know, making these girls one-dimensional characters or shifting them to the side so we can focus on this other thing. I refuse to let anything overshadow that these Black girls are my protagonists, and they are the center of their stories.
I really love that. I'm thinking a lot about how I grew up. So I did grow up in a place where it was like, if you saw like another Black person walking by, you'd be like, oh my God, like, where did you come from? You know? So I live in Los Angeles now. So thankfully that's not the case anymore. But growing up, you know, I was like the token. So, you know, like all those teen movies where you have like the token Black kid at the party, like that was me. And you know, I couldn't really dwell in it too much at the time because I was either going to stay in or, you know, go out and have friends, and all the friends I could have were white. But I think that a lot of times I did feel like I wasn't at the center of my own story, or that I was sort of pushed into the background because of the people who were around me and the way that they probably looked at me. Like a lot of times thinking, you know, saying like, well, you're not really Black, because I wasn't the type of Black that they thought Black should be. So for me, I really push back against that in my story, similar to what Bethany is saying. I just really want my Black girls to be at the center. They're not there to be perfect. They're not there to fill any role that says they should be this or that just because they're Black. Like, they're going to make the same mistakes that white protagonists get to make. They're going to just live their lives as full human teenage girls. That's so important to me.
Yeah, for me, it's like I grew up, I grew up in the Black church in the South. So I grew up around plenty of Black people. You know, I have a huge family here. Both my mom and my dad have like 10 and 9 brothers and sisters, and they're all in Houston. And well, my mom's side, some of hers is in Ohio. But most of their family is here. And so I have tons of cousins and I have tons of family. And then I grew up in the church. And, you know, growing up, probably in my younger years in elementary, I went to a predominantly Black school. And there I had the problem of, oh, you talk white, you know, all that mess, you know, that, all of that anyways. And then I went to a school that was predominantly white, but I guess it still had, I guess all the Black people kind of stuck together on the basketball team. A lot of the Black girls on the basketball team. So I played. Oh, here's me playing basketball, y'all. By the way,
Oh my
it's still
gosh.
my age too. Class of '93.
93.
Yeah.
Wow.
I like the hair too. That's very
yeah,
of the
my hair.
time.
Oh,
I
yes.
always, had it
You
laid
got the
back.
I like
swoop?
that.
Yeah. Oh my
Always. But the point, I guess, of what I'm making is that, especially in high school, because I was around Black people so much and I had so many Black friends, and I didn't really think about my Blackness. It's not like I was walking around aware. And I guess, from my boyfriend's perspective, I could see it through them because we lived in the neighborhood that we lived in. And I had a friend also, my other Black friend lived in the neighborhood. Cops would stop them, and so our parents had to call the cops, like, y'all stop. Our daughters are here and they have Black boyfriends, stop calling the cops. Or my brother would have experiences. I had most of my racial experiences in college, that and law school. I don't even, yeah. But in high school, I was kind of in like this kind of sweet, I don't know, spot where I wasn't faced. I guess I wasn't, maybe I was also kind of oblivious, or, I was just surrounded by people who loved me. I was surrounded by love, and it was all love. And, I was surrounded by plenty of Black people. And so I think too, in literature and, for our young people, I think there's such a range of books out there that deal with Blackness on a lot of different ways, but also think it's important to just let them be sometimes, because white kids just get to be, what I'm saying, in they books, why can Black kids just be, as they are? White kids are not always framing themselves in their whiteness, which, should happen more. It's actually refreshing. Even I feel like, in the industry, I don't think I've ever been asked to talk about Blackness so much, in my life until I entered the YA industry. But I thought I would find it, I guess, attractive or appealing or interesting if white people were asked more about race. If white people were asked to step up more and what do you think about race? And what do you think about, more panels about white people, what they think about how they fit into the race question, and let them kind of take it on so that Black people don't always have to be the ones, dealing with the race issue all the time. I don't know. I kind of went off and, to the side a little bit, but
yeah, we liked it.
It's all pertinent. It's all pertinent.
It's all, but yeah. And so, but I do want, because, my daughter too, I have a daughter now. And, and I remember when I was young, picking up books and a lot of them being about slavery, when I was very young. And now the kids obviously have so much more. And so they should be able to pick up a book about romance and to just be fun and about these characters just going through, and trying to deal with kind of the bigger life questions, that kind of haunt your spirit and haunt your soul. And there are so many different aspects of life that we can deal with. Race is one of them, but there are a million other things going on with our Black youth as well.
I would say having a son, especially, if it were up to me, he's read a lot of repeatedly, consistently read books of a type that I'm like, I'm not in the mood. I don't want to deal with this right now. Like, I don't want every single book that I pick up, every single YA book that I pick up about Black kids to be this. And that's my reaction. But when I realized that my son was like, like gobbling it up and was searching those out, I was like, okay, we are two very different people, and that he can see what he needs to see, because, in California, I went to majority white schools, but I church and neighborhood, and that slowly changed. But I feel like the country for the beginning of his life, he went to school in Montreal up until middle school. Really, it meant a lot to him. I mean, after The Hate U Give, it was everything that came after that. He was obsessed with. He was reading it. I do want to watch out for his mental health and make sure that, let's take a breather if you need a breather. But for him, it was like, but I'm going to these schools where people have no idea what it is to be Black American. And yes, that's not everything, but that's real, and that does
Yeah.
impact everything else for us. So when I realized, I had to basically be like, okay, I don't want to read it all the time, but if you want to read it all the time, I mean, I'm so happy
Oh,
this
yeah.
exists for you. Because when he first started reading, he was really into fantasy, and I remember the day that he was maybe 6 into this series, and he was like, I can't do this. And I'm like, what are you? He was very young. He was maybe 9 years old. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I can't have the person be described to me as alabaster skin again. I can't
Hmm.
have this, can't find out every single one of these kids is blonde again. I can't do it. He never
Mm,
picked that series up again, and he went and started reading basically dragon books, only fantasy books that where the protagonists were dragons, until seriously,
mm,
until like Thug came out. And then, wait a minute, now there's all, he's completely in love, and he's obsessed with the fact that he has so many choices now.
yeah.
But the thing that I love about Justin A. Reynolds wrote Opposite of Always, and it was a completely different, very, just very, and obviously you have someone who's trying to save the person they fall in love with, very, very time travel, and you've got a family dynamic, friendship, and different stuff, and they don't face certain things. And I tore through that book personally. He loved it as well, but it was nice. It was a nice break.
Mm.
Okay, but what about a Black boy who keeps going back in time to try to say he met and immediately fell in love with? Of course, the
Oh, yeah.
tone being very light, and I absolutely loved that. So I think we always need to remember that, like, I don't want to erase certain things because I've got a kid who's like, I need somebody to talk about what I actually feel, instead of me having to try to constantly be like, spitting in them. So I know that it's necessary, but I do love that we are able, and we have to keep pushing it. Okay, I'm not gonna write about that this time. You're gonna I'm not gonna do it that way this time, and you're gonna deal with it, because we do need more stories.
Mhm.
Hmm. And don't get me wrong. Yes, I completely agree that stories are necessary. We have to speak the truth, and stories that are speaking the truth of our, kids getting killed, of our kids, being in jail, of our kids. All that is necessary in the truth. I'm just saying that, for me,
Mhm.
I don't feel like it's necessary for me to do that, because
Right,
there's a lot of that out there. And it's
right.
like,
Mhm.
and but I will say, even in this love story, race stuff comes up, because race stuff is a part of life. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's still in there. It's not the
Right,
main point,
right,
but it's still in there, because they black. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? So stuff is gonna come up.
right.
So
Exactly.
it's in there. But yeah.
Yeah.
And touching on that, kind of like piggybacking on that, I was thinking about the discussion about the bodies, right? Because what Bethany and Liara and Brandy are saying, and especially what younger generations are reading, is a lot about our bodies and how they're viewed by others, how the characters view themselves, and also those reactions that come about that may encourage that kind of self awareness. And that awareness can be positive, negative, in
Mhm,
between, right?
mhm,
And I think something that is so magnificent about the work that you do, not just within your writing, but also like how you interact and how you talk about the work and how you pursue the work, is that there's such differentiation in terms of how you look at the body and how you show expression of Black bodies and Black female bodies, of being desirable, of being
mhm,
having humility, of being vulnerable. And in the male ones too, like Rex he's vulnerable.
Mhm.
And so I'm
mhm.
curious about that and that pursuit also And maybe again, that's an unfair question. I love doing craft questions, but sometimes I feel like it's unfair because it's like, how'd you do that? I'm like, I don't know.
Like, I don't know. Yeah, exactly.
I had my third cup of coffee and it just happened, and it was due tomorrow. And but it's just something I feel like is in the mindset. When I talked to Renee Watson about it, she said she's very, very aware who she's writing for whenever she pursues what she's writing. And it's not like, Bethany, what you're saying of like, oh my God, I have to write it for. She's just like, I'm very protective, but in a way of, I don't want to lie to them. I don't want to talk down to them, and I don't want to, feed the industry. Like, my concern are Black girls. And that means being concerned with their body and how their bodies are presented.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like in this one, it's a dual POV, the romance, and I had as much concern for Rex as I did Carly. I had really a lot of concern for both of them, and it was really important that I convey a sense of tenderness, between them, tenderness with their bodies, tenderness with their hearts, tenderness. Because especially for our young Black boys, it's not always how they see themselves represented in the media with a sense of tenderness. So it was important for me, to show Rex being super tender to Carly. And for Carly, it was important for me to show she's very strong. And so the relationship is kind of flipped. It's like, the dynamic of, one person chasing each other. They both love each other, but Rex is kind of a little after her more than she is with him. And that is also how we don't see it a lot, male-female relationships. But it's, obviously it happens both ways all the time in real life. But Carly, it's important Carly is obsessed with this model, and I'll show you her on the Instagram. Her name is Sabina Carlson, because Carly is a redhead Black girl with a whole bunch of freckles. And so she seeks that out. And she's kind of in love with this model because, the model looks like her. Okay. I'll find the girl, but we can continue the conversation. I don't want to be on here trying to look her up on my Instagram. But I feel like, Black girls come in all shades. They come in all colors. They come in with red hair. They come with freckles. They come without freckles. They come skinny. They come larger. They come all the ways. You know what I'm saying? And so it's important to show all the ways we are, and all the ways we are beautiful.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think for me, I think a lot about, again, how I was seen growing up and maybe not feeling as attractive as my friends because I didn't look like them, and knowing that the boys that were around may think I'm attractive even, but not act on it because it wasn't popular to date, a Black girl in the 90s if you were a white guy in Southwest Missouri. So I also grew up in a Black church. That was about the only place that I ever saw Black people. And also, strangely, my parents also have a ton of siblings. So my mom has 12 siblings, and my dad has 9. So I also have 60 first cousins and 21 aunts and uncles, and it's a lot. So, but they weren't in my hometown. So I didn't see a lot of that, but I grew up with that sense of we are a church family, and you do not have sex before marriage, and you're just pretty much chaste. And I wasn't really with that because my friends weren't, and I wanted to be really kind of like my friends and just having this real teenage experience. And so I'm really pushing back against kind of how I was raised in my books. And my mom, I know, just kind of clutches her pearls every time she reads one. She's like, you weren't raised like that. I'm like, I know, but that's why I'm writing about it. So the girls in my books have sex and they enjoy it. And, there's definitely some unhealthy relationships in some of my books. And actually, I think The Voting Booth is, spoiler alert, the only one that probably doesn't have sex in it out of my YA books. But I just think it's really important, again, to not be you have to uphold a certain view of a Black girl because we need to portray this to the community that you're this perfect person who never like makes mistakes or doesn't get to live like other people. So for me, that's really important. I know people kind of get mad about all the sex in my books, but I try to, show responsible teens, and also teens are having sex. And so I don't think it would be smart or responsible to portray in my books, in realistic contemporary fiction, the kind of teens that I'm writing about, that they wouldn't be having sex, because they are. So for me, it's like examining the Black body is like trying to take away some of that stigma of like over sexualized, while also letting them be actual teens who do get to act like teenagers and explore.
I love that, because it's such a problem in the Black community still, with how, we have these super high standards, like, our Black girls are not supposed to have sex, and, they're supposed to be good girls, while the Black, it's embedded in our culture. It's embedded in our music. It's, everywhere. Even what's the thing? Who came out with their daughter earlier this year? What kind of rapper? T.I. Yes, T.I.
We can't.
Yeah. No, but it's a problem. It's a problem. Yeah. And so it's like, I love that Black girls in your books are having sex. I would have loved to be reading about Black girls having sex, because I was having sex, with my boyfriend, and I was lying about it. I told no one. I didn't even tell my best friends. I was lying about it. I was literally praying every night that God would forgive me, and every time after I finished having sex, I'd be like, please forgive me, please forgive me. Then I would just go back and having sex the next time, but it's a problem. Oops. It's a problem with it's a problem. So having girls be free in their bodies, and showing girls who are free in their bodies is something that our girls definitely need to see. So and I'm the same way. My girls like the sensation of the tingles and and the sexual feelings.
I hear you. So we have like 3 minutes left, so Bethany, do you have anything to add quickly?
Yes. In my book, both of the girls have different experiences with how they feel about their physical bodies, and the bond between them that you see is that Effie, who is the one who she deals with what they think is eczema and different things, she doesn't like for her hair, her scalp to be touched. She doesn't generally people to just be, and it's kind of like when you are around in a predominantly white area in the first place. We know that don't touch my hair. And so you see the intimacy between them in that they touch, and that's a comfort to Effie versus feeling like somebody is preying upon you or something. But the other thing is that obviously, having grown up in the Black church as well, I'm going to see in any of my books is a Black girl being called fast. Sex doesn't have work.
Yeah.
So I'm serious. Like, that word is not reserved for who's doing what. It's reserved for what we think you might be doing. We want to control your behavior. So I was just watching been loving years now, and for some reason, and it is a virgin in the show, knows this, and the sister knows this, but the parents keep referring to her as fast, and I'm like, we have got to stop using this word specifically with Black girls. It's actually triggering to me to hear this word so, and just with Black girls, not with Black boys, not with, so it was very specific to us, and it's male shame, and it's meant to embarrass you. And I believe that this show was using it, and they're almost using it like playfully, and I'm like, it's not yet. So that's super duper important to me as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you all. I can't believe it's been like 44 minutes. So thank you, Liara, Bethany, Brandy, and Jenny, ASL interpreter extraordinaire. And I really encourage everyone, please buy their books. Encourage everyone to buy their books. They're just amazing women, as you've heard, and they're coming out soon. So thank you again for being part of Everywhere Book Fest. And this is Out of the Box, exploring the boundlessness of Black girlhood. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.